Hello. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I'm going to introduce everybody on your screens very shortly. We're now live on Facebook Live. This is a Birmingham Live special event to discuss the issue of road safety. You'll be aware, if you've been reading local media over the last few weeks, that it's a topic that has really come to the forefront again. It's a constant in all our lives. Most of us drive, walk, cycle, or scoot somewhere. So road safety affects all of us. So I'm going to start by introducing our panelists who've kindly joined us today and given up some of their time to take your questions. And thank you to all those on Facebook Live who are joining us. Please feel free to drop your comments and questions in. First of all, I'm going to introduce two representatives from West Midlands Police. Thank you so much to Chief Inspector Nick Hill and Inspector Tim Bowman from West Midlands Police, who are joining us and going to take some questions. Nice to see you. Also with us is Adam Tranter. Adam is the Walking and Cycling Commissioner for the West Midlands, appointed by Mayor Andy Street to look into, and I think it's fair to say, lobby for improvements on road safety and active travel issues across the region. Cllr Liz Clements is the Cabinet Member for Transport in Birmingham City Council. She's also a regular cyclist, walker and user of public transport. Dr. Justine Lee, who's with us, she is a major trauma surgical specialist from University Hospitals Birmingham NHS Trust. Justine and her colleagues really are at the sharp end of the impact of road safety crashes and incidents. Also with us is Martin Price. Martin's from the campaign group Better Streets for Birmingham, which has, I think it's fair to say, has made the headlines over the last few weeks and has really worked very hard to raise the profile of this issue, including through protest events and awareness raising. Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Jane Haynes. I am the People and Politics Editor for Birmingham Live, but I'm also here representing our readers. And we'll be posing the questions that they want answers to. And it's fair to say we've been absolutely inundated with questions on this topic and opinions. They vary from those with real concerns about the safety of them and their children and their loved ones walking and cycling and driving around Birmingham. People posing solutions, some of them very innovative, which I'll touch on some of those. There are calls for more enforcement from the police, calls for less enforcement, lifetime road bans, more segregated lanes for cyclists and walkers, more pedestrianisation, anger at what is perceived as a draconian attack on law-abiding motorists. All of those opinions will come across over the next 45 minutes. So I'll try to get to as many questions as I can. Thank you again to all who've joined us. As I say, this is a hot topic at the moment, but I'm going to start with a question for each of our panellists. In a city where in a typical year, 3.5 billion miles are travelled by vehicles on our roads, the question I'd like to start with is, do you feel Birmingham's roads are safe? I'm going to start over with you, Martin, if that's okay. Martin Price from Better Streets for Birmingham. Your message from your campaign seems to be that they aren't. So I don't know if you can summarise your thoughts on this. Thanks.
Yeah, Jane, thank you for inviting us here. So since May, we've seen several people not make it home. And these people were just trying to go about their lives, getting from A to B in a sustainable way and trying to do so. But they've got a constant fear of being mowed down. And these people are just going to work at university and also children just going to school. And we had several communities approach us since this, and they've got concerns that their neighbourhoods are not safe because of roads. Many of our members are also drivers and don't feel safe driving. I'm a driver. I don't feel safe driving in Birmingham. And since fixed cameras were switched off, someone with or without a licence can get behind the wheel and largely do what they like without fear of being caught. Speeding, using their phone, drink or drug driving, running red lights, ignoring banned turns. Many illegally customise their plates to evade cameras that we do have. And people park wherever they like, putting pavements and crossings out of action for our most vulnerable people walking and wheeling along. And for cyclists, the city is planning to build around 6 kilometres of new protected cycle lanes per year. So for the most part around the city, they're not protected either. And regardless of any statistics and any death or serious injury on our roads is wholly unacceptable in 2023. And kids should be able to get to school without being mown down. So I think with all that considered, no, Birmingham's roads are not safe for any road users.
Thank you so much, Martin. There really has been a spate of these incidents, quite horrifically, and huge impact on the families affected. I'd like to bring in our police colleagues at this point. Clearly, part of your overarching role is to enforce the rules of the road and to play a part in keeping people safe. Again, can I just ask you the same question, really? Do you feel Birmingham's roads are safe?
Thanks, Jane, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak here today. I think it's a really open question in terms of do we think Birmingham's roads are safe? I think in the main, yes, we do believe that Birmingham roads are safe, notwithstanding that certainly from ourselves is the whole host of different issues that we need to consider. So there's the engineering of the road structure, there's the education around ensuring that all of our communities understand how to abide by the laws of the road, both in terms of road users, cyclists, pedestrians, and everybody's got a responsibility in terms of ensuring that our road networks are safe. But then also from ourselves, from a policing point of view, we've got the enforcement side as well. And clearly that's a real big part of keeping our roads safe, to ensure that those who aren't abiding by the rules of the law are dealt with in the appropriate manner. And I think we've noted, I think Martin mentioned some of the improvements in terms of cycle lanes on the south side of the city. I'm a cyclist myself, and I commute in and out of Birmingham, and I 100% agree with that comment that actually when we start looking at those cycle lanes, when we start improving that kind of transport network across Birmingham, that will lead to greater road safety. So are the roads in Birmingham perfect? Of course they're not. We're not going to stand here and say that. Do we think they're safe? Yes. But can more be done? Absolutely it can. Tom, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I just think in relation to what Nick's said, certainly from the engineering side of it, the local authorities are made aware when collisions do take place. And finding out some of the problems is probably the key to prevention before we even get to enforcement. The education piece is fundamental to ensuring that road safety. And then, yeah, I completely agree. We've got our part to play then in the enforcement activities that we currently conduct and will continue to conduct.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, both of you, for those opening comments. Again, I want to give the same opportunity to Adam Tranter, Walking and Cycling Commissioner for the region. Adam, what are your kind of overarching thoughts on what has been going on in recent weeks, but also the bigger picture of road safety?
Yeah, it's been a tragic 4 weeks with so many collisions with vulnerable road users, but we have to also zoom out and realise that this happens every week in our region, every week in Birmingham, and we have to not accept that this is a normal thing. So, you know, if we carry on as we are, around 400 people will have serious life-changing injuries per year, and around 25 will die. You know, can you imagine how people would feel if once a year a Boeing 747 fell out of the sky over Birmingham? We would be calling for urgent investigation, urgent inquiries as to how that happened. But because of the scale of road danger, not just in this region, across the country, we have kind of become normalised to it. And I think that's really, really dangerous. And I think the reason this has resonated with so many members of the community is because they can see it all day, every day. They can see it when they cross the road to take their kids to school. They know that they wouldn't let their kids go to school on their own because of that safety. And they can see it from our bigger roads where people are racing cars to our minor roads where people are speeding. And all of this discourages active travel. But more than that, it's way more than that. It discourages people going about their life and having a good, thriving community, which I think is the nub of this and why it's resonated so much. I think just finally on whether Birmingham is safe, I just want to these are all about human lives and the families, and having heard from victims' families recently, it's really heartbreaking. So I don't want to make this into stats, but what I would say is that in Birmingham, you are 80%. You have a 80% higher injury risk for pedestrians than the national average, and we know that's concentrated in inner city urban areas, and also that we have an unacceptable level of injury risk for vulnerable road users, and that in turn is stopping people from traveling in the way that I think they should be able to, and living their lives in the way that I think they should be able to.
Thank you so much, Adam, for those thoughtful opening comments. And on all of these, just to let you know, people who are dropping comments and questions in, we'll be going back and putting some of those to different participants. I'd like to turn next to Dr. Lee. You've got a different role, I guess, from most other people here. We're not asking you to talk about road redesign and other things that might be useful, but tell us a little bit about the impact that you're seeing and your kind of initial impressions from years of being at the front line of the medical response to road tragedies.
Oh, thank you, Jane, and thank you for inviting me to join in this discussion today. Probably just to give a little bit of context, my work is looking after the most seriously injured patients, and we are one of 4 major trauma centres that cover the whole of the West Midlands region. And just at the QE ourselves, we look after about 2,500–3,000 patients a year. And about 25% of those are people who have been involved in road traffic accidents. Now, whether that's the occupants of a vehicle or whether that's somebody who's been struck by a vehicle, pedestrians and motorcyclists, cyclists, etc. But that sort of forms, I say, about 25% of our work. And as Martin and Adam have commented already, that this really represents the people who don't come home and the impact that has on their families and their friends and the healthcare workers that have to look after them. And it's quite an emotional plea that I give, because actually that is impact on all of us. That's our community and that's our society, as well as those who are expected to look after them and become injured. And I would very much say that something that I've always thought about is about prevention. And a lot of the road traffic accidents that we see are purely preventable. They are caused by drunk drivers. They are caused by drivers who are under the influence of drugs. Situations that people really shouldn't be in. We deal with a lot of other aspects of I'm going to say injuries that where people are seriously injured. If we can prevent so much of the cases that we see, the impact, as I said, on our families and our friends and our community and our healthcare workers would be so much more reduced.
Justine, look, thank you so much for those opening comments, and I think you've helped us kind of, I guess, remember what this is all about. This is about individuals and their families and their friends who are left bereft and devastated, and serious injury clearly is exactly the impact of being of having a life-changing injury. So thank you and your colleagues for all you do to look after those who end up needing your care. But you're right, we need to do something about it. I'm going to move on now to a couple of comments. Oh, my apologies, I haven't brought in Cllr Clements yet. Councillor, you've got a really vital role, because clearly your brief and your position of responsibility, if you like, for our transport network and road safety is included in what you do. So again, what are your thoughts? Do you think Birmingham is safe right now?
Well, I think what we've got, a lot of aggressive, reckless and dangerous driving out there, and we've got to really clamp down on that. And I think the message is that we've got to rigorously enforce the rules of the road, but we've got to expect people to drive carefully and responsibly and taking care and having consideration for other road users, pedestrians and cyclists. Because in my role, I do a lot of site visits. I've been on one this morning. If you stand by the side of a road in Birmingham, it's just really mind-blowing really to see some of the driving behaviours, the speeding, people on phones. You can't hold a conversation by the side of the road because it's just simply too noisy. Try standing by the side of Tyburn Road, for example, and try and discuss anything. It's absolutely impossible. I mean, Adam's right. We cannot tolerate the level of deaths and serious injuries that we currently have in Birmingham. If we don't do anything, we will end up seeing 25 people a year being killed and 400 people in Birmingham suffering serious injuries. That's intolerable. So that's why the council is fundamentally changing its approach on road safety. We're redrafting our road safety strategy to turn it into a Vision Zero strategy. And the aim of Vision Zero is to eliminate deaths on the road and serious injuries on the road. And I think at the beginning of your comments, Jane, you gave a stat for them. I don't know whether it was the number of vehicle miles or the number of journeys every year in the city. And I think we've got to actually start talking about challenging the dominance of motor vehicles in Birmingham, because that's the underlying problem. If you want to make the city a city for people and a city that's more livable and is safer for pedestrians and cyclists and everybody, we need a lower volume of vehicles travelling on our roads. And that's why we need to get people thinking about, can they do some of their journeys through other modes of transport, public transport, walking or cycling? And then it becomes a vicious circle, doesn't it? Because we've got to make the roads safer so that people will consider doing the walking and cycling and ensure that we have better public transport. But I feel that for too long, the city, in the way that it's been designed in the post-war period, has all been about giving priority to motor vehicles. And we've got to start reversing that and actually putting people at the centre of all of our planning and our policy decisions.
Liz Clements, thank you so much for that. Right, we're going to crack on because we've got lots and lots of questions to put to you now. Thank you so much for those opening comments, though. I'm going to go back to the police first. We've had a lot of comments saying the problem is lack of enforcement. I'll read you one. Martin, you'll want to come back on this as well. It's a comment that I'll read it in full, even though it's a little bit insulting, to put it mildly. This all comes down to inadequate policing. Everything Better Streets for Birmingham and Co. whine about wouldn't happen if the rules were enforced. People speeding is against the rules. People not stopping at the lights is against the rules. People driving under the influence is against the rules. If the rules are enforced, none of the things that people whine about would happen. So the problem is inadequate policing, nothing more. Can you come back to me on that, please, Chief Inspector Hill and Inspector Bowman?
No, of course. Thanks, Jane. Thanks for the question. I've seen Annabelle's statement as well, which is very similar. So I think I'll respond in two parts of it, really, and then bring in Tom in terms of the specialist knowledge around road traffic policing. I think everybody's talking about different behaviours, so whether that's kind of drivers using mobile phones, whether that's drivers using drugs, or whether it's drivers using drink, these are all unacceptable driver behaviours, as are speeding as well, which is some of the things that we're talking about when we talk about road safety. None of those things are acceptable, and obviously the police have a duty to enforce around those behaviours, to challenge that, to make arrests, to issue tickets, and these are all things that we do. That's only one part of the solution. So policing by itself cannot change driver behaviour, and certainly our messaging going out to communities and anybody listening to this podcast now is if they're in a car and somebody's kind of demonstrating those behaviours, we need other people to start challenging those behaviours as well. You wouldn't accept getting into a car with somebody if they were drunk. Why would we accept them using their mobile phone? Why would we accept them speeding as well? Everybody has that ability to challenge that behaviour. From a policing point of view, of course we challenge that, and of course we enforce that. Would we like to be able to enforce more? Of course we would. We'd like to be able to challenge every example of that driving, but at the same time we have to be realistic in what we can achieve, and we can't be everywhere all of the time. Now, in terms of some of the specifics around that, I'll probably just bring in Tom, who can talk about some of that enforcement activity that West Midlands road traffic policing do.
Thanks, Nick. So with regards to enforcement, so every day enforcement activity takes place on the roads of the West Midlands. To give you a bit of an idea as to what that looks like over the last 12 months, we've seized 8,123 uninsured cars. That's an average of 677 a month. We've enforced 724 seatbelts offences, 2,615 speed offences through handheld device detection, and 86,965 speeding and red light offences through our central ticket office road safety camera vans. In addition to that, we've had 2,500 or 2,554 drink or drug drivers arrested, and we've had just short of 1,100 drivers reported for using mobile phones whilst driving. With regards to the number plate offences, because this does feature quite heavily in feedback from our communities, we've had 1,828 number plate offences enforced also. With regards to the wider piece of road safety, we have our road harm reduction team. The road harm reduction team works, they are a dedicated unit that don't get used to other policing activities, that constantly engage with a number of initiatives. That can include road safety operations such as close pass, which is where we enforce on behalf of vulnerable road users, i.e. cyclists. We look at zigzags, street racing, safer junctions, construction use offences, and we do that through a multi-agency approach by utilising site officers. Those are known as MARSOs, multi-agency response to road safety operations. And those are highly successful with regards to enforcement. What we'll balance that is to say, could we do more? We would love to do more. And we work with us to swell that resource and deliver the best service that we can with those partners, ensuring that the communities are getting a service. But we fully accept and completely appreciate any death on the road is just not acceptable. And so it's quite right to ask the questions of what are we doing and what are we going to carry on doing.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you for that response. I'm going to bring Adam Tranter in to kind of pick up the key messages that were raised there and the response that you've heard, Adam.
Thanks, Jane. You know, I think I want to say one thing very clearly is having been engaged with the police over the last couple of weeks and the Assistant Chief Constable, I've been really, you know, impressed with how this has been, you know, focused on and taken seriously. And I'm really appreciative of that. I also want to say that the police have done quite an incredible job after the fact in terms of tracking down hit and run drivers and putting all the resources they have to be able to do that. But I want to side with the police and say that you know, they cannot be everywhere all of the time, and part of the offences, you know, of mobile phone use, etc., has to come through either technology or you know, behaviour change campaigns. But I did also want to say that there is, you know, there are solutions available to us that it would be great to see West Midlands Police push on in a bigger way. One is third-party reporting, so dashcam reporting to you and I, and that enables citizens, you know, the citizens of this region, to be able to have eyes and ears everywhere when drivers are you know, affecting their communities. And some recent inquiries have led to the findings that actually the prosecutions through that are dropping and the submissions are going up. And I'm appreciative that the police have now ordered a review into that system, but we have to do everything we can and be firing on all cylinders to be successful here, and we can't become complacent. So I'm grateful the police is doing that, but I would say that enforcement is going to be a really big part of this in the short term. Infrastructure, while it needs to come, it does take time and maybe too long. We need to work on that as well. But I think there is a general feeling of that if you do something in this city in a car, you may well get away with it, and I think that's why it's resonated so highly with people as well.
Thanks, Adam, and it's a point that, you know, we've been thank you, Adam. As I say, it's a point we've been raising in multiple articles over recent months, highlighting, for example, the fact that there are only 6 sets of speed cameras, static speed cameras in Birmingham. They're all 6 average speed cameras, all on A roads. Rob Cooley, thank you for your comment on the comments, who's pushing back at a couple of those comments. The bulk of road traffic policing is focused on our motorways, not urban roads. Urban roads are places where there are far more vulnerabilities. The priorities set within set within policing are all wrong. We've also recently had an incident on the A45 in which a young boy was killed. Again, the police will be aware that there's been calls for tougher enforcement there, and particularly calls for a very high profile awareness raising campaign to show that speeding on that particular stretch of road is unacceptable. So I don't know if I can just come back to you very quickly on those 2 points. When there are incidents, do the police react appropriately, do you think, and do what they can to make sure drivers know that they cannot get away with poor driving in those areas? And are you doing enough in the urban roads of Birmingham compared to the motorways?
Thanks, Jane. Thanks, everybody. So I'll try to work through some of those points, then bring Tom in for some of the more technical pieces as well. And you obviously mentioned the kind of most recent kind of fatal incident as well. Probably just worth reiterating, certainly as a policing family as well. We kind of share that feeling of that devastation when we have kind of loss of life within the community. Certainly our officers respond to numerous instances each year, and we are quite often first on the scene. So I know Justine earlier was talking about that trauma care, and certainly our police officers are exposed to an awful lot of that as well, and see that at first hand. So I think first we need to acknowledge that obviously, people do grieve when we have community members who get lost, and clearly family members get left behind. And we obviously feel that as well. I want to help improve that. In terms of answering those questions, in terms of West Midlands Police road traffic, we don't work on the motorways. We're based within West Midlands area and within the urban environment. So whereas the Central Motorway Group would work on the motorways, certainly locally, that's not so much the case. So we're certainly based within inner city areas, trying to enforce in those areas, which you've already mentioned, are so important to everybody. With regards to some of the more technical issues, I'm just going to bring in Tom here to perhaps answer some of those.
Yeah, just in relation to the policing of West Midlands roads. The comment is quite right in the fact that there is a dedicated resource that sits with the Central Motorway Policing Group. Their sole purpose is to police the motorway network. That is a separately funded organisation that is shared with Staffordshire Police. So they provide policing for the network in the West Midlands and in the Staffordshire area. West Midlands Roads Policing Unit has no function within the motorway network. It spends its entire time on the streets of the West Midlands enforcing road traffic legislation wherever they are directed. That's done through intelligence analysis, whereby the various locations that unfortunately get highlighted as a result of some of these sad incidents were deployed proactively to those locations. Sometimes it is a design-out problem which the enforcement can complement. Sometimes it's happened for an excess of driver error, but equally there's a need for the police to attend on every occasion. But just to reassure that caller, the streets of West Midlands are policed by roads policing officers who are a dedicated function for that purpose.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. I'm going to bring Liz Clements back in now, but I just want to read out a comment from Naomi Fisher. Thank you, Naomi. Oslo has achieved Vision Zero, no road deaths, with a joined-up approach using policy, enforcement and infrastructure changes, and critically accepting that car dominance is a major contributor to poor road safety. They've banned cars from lots of streets. We've got to face up to the fact it's not just about enforcement. Councillor Clements, is that something you agree with?
Not only do I agree with that, I've already said that. So I said that we're recasting our road strategy as precisely as a Vision Zero strategy, with the aim of eliminating deaths on the road and serious injuries. But to do that, we're going to have to operate in a completely different way. And Naomi's quite right that it's actually the dominance of cars on all our roads that's one of the fundamental underlying problems. But I wanted to come back to some of the heat that's being turned on the police and the debate about enforcement. Obviously, enforcement is a big challenge for the council as well. We are responsible for civil parking enforcement, so we've got we're reviewing our capacity on that. We need to look at how we're tackling obstructive parking, blocking of road routes, all of those sorts of things, everything that makes it more dangerous to be driving around or cycling or walking around Birmingham. So I absolutely accept the scrutiny that's that the council is under at the moment, and we've got to step up to that challenge. But I think I want to just talk about what has happened in the last 12 years, because I think it was Martin who said earlier in the conversation, fixed speed cameras were switched off. That's correct, but that wasn't just a thing that happened without a cause. It was because the budget for fixed speed cameras was cut, and the budget the dedicated road safety capital and revenue budget that goes to English councils also cut by the government at the beginning of austerity. And in 2011 and 2012, the police themselves, through their bodies like the Police Federation, the RAC Foundation, ROSPA, they all predicted that if you reduce the resources that are going into road safety, that will have a very negative impact on road safety on the road, because drivers will have the impression that they can drive with impunity and drive dangerously. So I think we've got to start asking for more resources to implement road safety improvements. And the police, I know, are, again, like the council, reviewing their resource allocation, and will be moving people into to working on roads policing. The council, we're looking at our capacity as well, but the fundamental issue is the resourcing, and that we are now living with the impacts of decisions and cuts that were made over a decade ago by a government that was implementing an austerity agenda. And people may think that's a partisan point or political point, but that is the environment that we're operating in. And I think we've got to turn the dial back, to emphasise the importance of road safety, and then tackle those behavioural issues, and say to people that when you're behind the wheel of your 2-ton vehicle, unless you obey the rules of the road, you're liable to end up injuring someone or killing them. And that's not just something, we just cannot tolerate that in Birmingham.
Thank you, Liz, for that. I'm going to bring Dr. Lee back in if you're still there. I know you're in a car right now, and I'm sure we'll be driving very safely to wherever it is you're going. But we've touched on the human impact. You touched on it. What kind of numbers are we talking about? You talked about kind of a quarter of serious trauma injuries that you're seeing are connected to road accidents. How do you think, what do we need to take away from these discussions to make it different? The data all shows that there's been a downward trend in road casualties, but that impact tends to have been on motorists and people within cars. Car designs are safer, we've got airbags, we've got all these other measures to protect motorists. But we seem to have reached a plateau. What do you think it's going to take to stop you and your colleagues confronting this on such a regular basis?
You're quite right, Jane. It's something that I have thought about, because, I remember my childhood having all of these sort of drink drive campaigns and clunk click, put your seatbelt on. And for some reason, some areas of our society, some culture has changed where it's acceptable to get behind the wheel after you've had a drink, to not put your seatbelt on. These are things that I think, particularly in the younger adult population, so those people who are in their 20s and 30s, for some reason this doesn't apply to them. Now, I accept that there's the lawlessness of being younger, but if I were to put my resources somewhere, I would go back to basics and actually re-look at these campaigns, particularly, as has always been commented, that we did lose a lot of resources. And as I don't remember these, I don't see these campaigns now that I saw when I was younger. And that's certainly the bulk of the road traffic accidents that we're seeing is people who have been involved in an incident where someone is under the influence of drink driving or drug taking.
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. I mean, maybe we need to raise awareness more. But the idea that we've reported today on a case where somebody had already been banned from the road for 18 months. They'd already been involved in an accident. They've been involved in another one that left somebody badly injured. They've got another road ban that lasts 3 years. So in 3 years' time, they're going to be back on the roads. subject to getting their licence, passing their test again. I don't know if you've got a personal opinion on this, but lots of people are concerned that we're just not tough enough. We're just not tough enough when people do break the law. We're allowing them back on the roads again. And that's something that I know a couple of, that I'm going to bring Martin back in on. But this idea of, if you break the law, you should not be allowed back behind the wheel of a car. It's a privilege, not a right. Is that something that you appreciate?
No, definitely. Personally, I would definitely feel that should be enforced and should be allowed, should be reinforced, because we do have to get tougher. People do need to understand the consequences of their actions and the impact that it has on others, etc. And if they don't feel it through sort of loss of their own liberties or from fines and that sort of thing, then actually, just banning them from the activity that they were involved in, but also being able, knowing that it's going to be reinforced. I do think this sector of society that we're talking about are people who do feel that that they're above the law and that they're not going to get caught. So let's just do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. I'm going to bring Martin in again now. Martin, you've listened to some of the responses so far, and I know that your campaign group, you don't see yourselves as anti-car, do you? I know it's sometimes portrayed as kind of, this whole movement for better road safety is being portrayed as an anti-car movement. What do you respond to those who say this is just an attack on motorists, full stop?
So at Better Streets for Birmingham, we want to make car-free travel the easiest option, but we totally acknowledge the role for cars and vehicles in some people's lives. You can't expect everybody to go car-free, but not every journey needs to be taken by a car. At the moment in Birmingham, the car seems to be the default. And there was a comment earlier that was saying around how public transport, if you go to a bus, you can't guarantee that it's going to turn up on time. And that's because we need fewer cars because they're getting in the way, and actually more bus priority as well. And we're starting to see that through some developments that are coming through up to 2027. And that's a really welcome move for sure. As I said at the top of today's call, we represent a lot of drivers as well. A lot of cyclists are drivers. A lot of people pay their vehicle exercise duty as well. And it's not safe out there to drive. I went to go and get coffee just before this meeting. I live in Northfield. I live in a 20-mile-an-hour zone. I walked out the road. Okay, yeah, people going 30, 40 miles an hour in an urban environment. We know that the great many casualties happen on 30-mile-an-hour roads as well. I walked down the high street. There were cars parked on the pavement. There was somebody walking with a cane trying to navigate those. People with pushchairs trying to navigate them as well. Deliveroo, Uber Eats, those types of moped drivers driving wherever they like through the pedestrian crossing onto the pavement. So it's just kind of not safe. But going back to the original point, we are not anti-car. We just want to see fewer of them. And that's clearly the way forward, to be able to have faster, more frequent buses through bus priority, through Sprint. That's worked amazingly when you look at the corridor that happened for the A34. Overall journey times were down. So that needs to be acknowledged, that is one of the ways that we're going to get to that future. And also just think, do I really need to take my car for this journey? There's a local school near here that the great many journeys are taken by car. They could be walked, they could be cycled. We really need to start thinking about this.
Thank you, Martin. I'm conscious that time is ticking by. There, as I say, there have been some great comments that mostly comments rather than specific questions. So thank you all for sharing your thoughts, and it's a conversation that we'll carry on reporting on. But given the time, I'd like to offer you all an opportunity to tell us what single thing do you or your organisation think would make the most difference to road safety in Birmingham? And is there anything that you can right now pledge to do to help make our roads safer? So I'm going to go to our lovely colleagues from the police first, if you wouldn't mind. So I'll repeat that again. What single thing? Sorry, I'll put my teeth in. What single thing do you think would make the most difference to safety on our roads in Birmingham? And is there something that that West Midlands Police can pledge to do that will make a difference?
Thanks, Jane. So I think it's in two parts, isn't it? So I'll try and answer the first part first. And I think a lot of the comments that people have made already offer excellent solutions. So just listen to Martin kind of speaking passionately there. Kind of fewer cars, kind of changing kind of public behaviour, kind of more reliance on public transport, or increasing that infrastructure throughout Birmingham. I think that'll have an impact on road safety, simply by the fact that there'll be fewer vehicles on the road and fewer journeys. Particularly kind of, around school times, around the end of the working day, when people change their habits of driving, I think that'll make a huge difference. In terms of local policing, what we can pledge, what we can do more of, I think we can still work better in partnership. So for ourselves, in terms of our road safety team, we've got various different operations running over the next month. So we're doing work in places such as March Hill, on the Hockley flyover, on Pershore Road, kind of committing to those operations, having our local officers engaging with local people, and then working with our partners here in road policing to make sure we can get the greatest impact in enforcing those poor driver behaviours. So I think that's what we can pledge, Jane.
Jane, just to add to that, with regards to West Midlands Police and roads policing, our new Chief Constable has pledged to invest more resource into roads policing. That isn't just words, that's actually happened now. We've got 23 new members of staff being recruited into the department and trained. Now, appreciating that takes a little bit of time, that is an additional 23 officers for roads policing, which in the grand scheme of things is quite a significant uplift for the department. So just to reassure you, it is being actioned at this time.
Thank you so much. That's really good to hear. I mean, an extra 23, that does sound like a really good, vital resource. Can you put that into perspective for me? How many is that out? I mean, is that adding a quarter to your workforce, or how big is that roads workforce already?
It's about 75 now, with some additional capabilities bolted onto that. So it's just short of a quarter, basically. Yes.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. That's and that's a really positive thing. So great to hear. And I'm sure people who are really anxious about enforcement activity and preventive work that you do will be pleased with that. Although I look forward to seeing if more comments drop in to tell me differently. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn next to Cllr Clements. Again, the same question. What single thing do you think would make the most difference? Sorry, Councillor, thank you.
Yeah, just muted myself. Well, I think we need people to drive less, and when they're driving, drive carefully, obey the rules of the road, and think about other road users. And what the council is going to do is play its part in the rigorous enforcement of the rules of the road. And so we've got to work with our police colleagues there. And we're looking at reducing speed limits on our big arterial roads where there's currently a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. So we're going to reduce those to 30 miles an hour. We're going to look at signal junctions and introduce priority for pedestrians and cyclists there, so that we're prioritising vulnerable road users at junctions. And as I've said already, we're going to develop a Vision Zero road safety strategy, which aims to eliminate deaths and serious injuries on the roads. But I just think, on speeding, the message is, please kill your speed, not a child or a vulnerable pedestrian.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Clements, for those closing comments. You touched on their campaign that was very successful in the Netherlands, which was called exactly that, Stop the Child Murdering. So I'm sure that we're going to see more activity in that regard in the coming weeks and months. Martin, can I bring you in? What single thing do you think would make the most difference, and what can your organisation pledge to do to play its part?
So we're going to continue giving frustrated citizens a platform for change and a platform to call for change and articulate change. We've been really clear in asking the council to achieve a 2025 delivery, not 2027, to relentlessly accelerate the implementation of our funded schemes and transport plan and not just keep ticking them over and over and over, as has happened with funds so far. And give timescales for the new road safety measures that Councillor Clements just read out there, but also with the police, resource policing of this issue through establishing a task force of dedicated officers to prevent crime that affects vulnerable road users and task safer neighbourhood teams with antisocial driving. A lot of these things fall between the cracks because of the complex responsibilities in law, so that's really important. And also, really, really importantly, properly resourcing transparent third-party reporting that always provides feedback, because that will just enable so much more enforcement within communities across Birmingham.
Martin, thank you. Thank you so much for those thoughtful comments and really good asks there, as well as commitments from your organisation to, as you say, keep giving voice to this. Can I move next to Adam? Adam, I'm sure you would like to see more than one thing happen, but if you could wave a magic wand and make one thing happen that would make a big difference, what would it be, and what can you pledge to do?
So I think we need to work together in partnership. It sounds like an obvious thing, but I've seen a real focus on that very recently, and it needs to be much more outcome focused and much more rigorous and challenging as well. I think part of what I've tried to bring to this in my own small way is by challenging ourselves and challenging partners to if we are doing the best we can be doing in this, and whether we think it is acceptable or inevitable that these things will happen. And I don't believe that to be the case. So I will continue to push on that. There was also, I'm very grateful to all the partners that we are all convening and talking on a daily basis on this, and there will be some formal outcome meetings as well. This is very high up on everyone's agenda, totally rightly so. I think we can also work together really well in terms of, and already has been doing, in terms of trying to retain speeding fines, for example, and working across the PCC's office, across the council and the combined authority to really be a united voice on this, and make it clear that this is about providing better, nicer places to live, that people feel safe. And I don't think that is too much to ask. And this is all quite uncomfortable stuff, but we need to tackle it head on. There is no other way.
Thank you, Adam. We'll keep reporting on how things develop over the next few weeks and months, and probably years. I'm going to leave the last word to Dr. Lee. If there was one thing that you would wish to see that would make a big difference to the workload of you and your colleagues, what would it be? And is there anything that, I'm not going to ask you to commit to anything personally, but is there anything that you want others to do?
Hi, Jane. I don't know if you can hear me, because I can't actually hear you, but I know that you're beginning to sum up now. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for including me in the discussion today. But in the future, I know my teams, and I thank my teams very much for receiving and looking after the patients that they do. But, we're very much about prevention and helping with the community effort to try and prevent these accidents from happening. And if there's anything that we or the University Hospitals Birmingham can do to contribute to that knowledge pool and produce data that would support any preventive actions, then we'd be very happy to do so.
Well, that is fantastic, and you may regret making that offer, because we'll now bombard you with requests for information. Hello? Hello, sorry. I think we kind of lost a bit of sound there, but thank you so much to Dr. Lee. We did hear you, even though you couldn't hear us. And as I suggested, we may well be inundating you with requests for information and more insight to help us spread the message. So that's a wrap from us. Thank you all so much for joining in the conversation. We will be reporting on the discussions today and tomorrow for Birmingham Live. Also, just to give a heads up that we are working closely with relatives of those who have been killed and injured on our roads, and discussing what role we can play as Birmingham Live and Birmingham Mail to raise the profile of the major concerns that some people have. So thank you very much. We're going to call it a day there. Please keep the comments coming. We'll keep putting your questions to everybody that we can. Thanks.